A comprehensive guide of violin bow technique for beginners. If we haven't met, hi, I'm Megan. I'm a violinist and teacher. I've been playing the violin for over 25 years. I have my bachelor's and master's degrees in violin performance, and I am Suzuki trained. At this point in my career, I've worked with hundreds of adult learners, both via private lessons and my online membership. So if you're looking for more structure and support along your journey, be sure to check out the links in the description. The goal of this video was to provide beginners with everything they need to know about violin bow technique, all in one place. I made separate videos about each of these topics before, but I wanted to put them all into one video to make it a little bit easier so you don't have to go scouring for a bunch of tutorials. Everything you need to know is in this one video. In this video, I'm going to cover how to hold the bow, bow mechanics, which is how to move the bow, how to bow straight, the balance of the bow hand, how to produce and change your sound, and how to develop fluidity. So let's start with the very basics of how to hold the bow. We are going to hold the bow with our right hand, but to start out, I recommend taking the bow with your left hand and placing it out in front of you with the hair pointing towards the ground. Then take your right hand and act like you're gonna give me a high five, and bend your thumb. Typically, the easiest thumb placement for beginners is placing the thumb on the outside of the bow on this silver part called the ferrule. You want to place the thumb on the inside corner by the nail, and you want it to be bent. Then you're going to place your middle finger directly across from the thumb, and the middle finger should be significantly over the bow, even touching the ferrule, that little metal part, a little bit. The ring finger is going to go right next door to the middle finger. Sometimes I like to say, oh, these two fingers are best friends. They want to sit next to each other and be next to each other all the time. But again, the ring finger is significantly over the bow. It's not, over the bow like that, but it's also not up here. The index finger is going to go about a finger's width apart from your middle finger. Typically right here where the grip and the winding meet. I'm going to touch the bow with my index finger in between the first and second knuckle right here. And then I'm going to put my pinky on top, nice and curved. I like to put my pinky slightly on the inside corner of the bow instead of right on top of the bow. Gives me a little bit more leverage. So things to watch out for. One, you don't want your two middle fingers to be up here. They should be over the bow so you have more control. And you do not want your pinky to be all the way out here on the screw. It should be pretty close to the rest of the fingers. Also, the pinky and the thumb must stay bent at all times. That is one of the hardest things about holding the bow as a beginner. This is a beginner bow hold, but the advanced bow hold is with the thumb inside the bow. The reason why I like to start with the thumb outside of the bow is because it's a little bit easier to grab. When we're first starting, we're still working on our fine motor skills, so being able to hold a little bit bigger of an area is typically easier. And it's also easier to tell if the thumb is bent or not. But ultimately, your thumb should go inside the bow directly on top of the frog. So not inside the frog, but on top of the frog, on that inside corner, still staying bent. You can think of your thumb and your middle finger as the center of your bow hold, and the balance will change depending on what part of the bow you're in. So that is how to hold the bow. When it comes to bow mechanics, or how we move the bow, we want to open and close our elbow. So a pretty common mistake that beginners make is actually using their shoulder to move the bow, like this, which, as you can see, makes the bow really crooked, and ideally we want our bow to stay straight or parallel to the bridge. So we have two basic bow directions: down bow, which is when your hand goes downwards, and then up bow, which is when your hand goes upwards. And again, the movement comes from the elbow. So when you go down, you open your elbow, and when you go up, you close your elbow. Your shoulder should be completely still. If you are having a bit of an issue with this, if you are moving your shoulder, first of all, it's totally normal. The shoulder is a bigger muscle than your elbow, so it is like more default to move, if that makes sense. But something you can try is going against a wall, putting your upper arm against a wall, like this, and that will make it impossible to move your shoulder. Now let's learn how to bow straight. So the reason why it is so important to bow straight is because each point on the violin sounds a little bit different. We have 5 sounding points. Sounding point 1 is basically on the bridge or right next to the bridge. Sounding point 2 is a little farther away, but still very close to the bridge. Sounding point 3 is directly in the middle, halfway between the bridge and the fingerboard. Sounding point 4 is a little bit closer to the fingerboard. And then sounding point 5 is over the fingerboard. Each one of these sounding points sounds a little bit different. The closer you are to the bridge, the louder the sound is going to be, and the closer you are to the fingerboard, the softer the sound is going to be. Each of these sounding points has their own time and place, but for beginners, try to stay in sounding point 3. So try to keep your bow directly halfway between the bridge and the fingerboard. Also, try to keep your bow hair flat on the string. You may see more advanced players tilting their bow hair, and we do have a very good reason for that. Tilting your bow hair generally lends to a sweeter sound. And again, that has a time and a place, but it is important to learn to bow with flat bow hair first. And just so you know, when you tilt your bow hair, always tilt the stick away from you, never towards you. Okay, so this is always wrong. This is sometimes appropriate. So in order to bow straight, we are actually not going to move our hand in a straight line. I like to think of this as like a crescent moon or a half circle shape. But as you're going down bow, your hand is going to go out away from you. Okay, so as I go down bow, my hand goes that way. So, did you see it? So as I go down bow, my hand goes out and away from me. But then as I go up bow, my hand comes inwards. So out on the down bow, in on the up bow. Now it's important to note the whole point of this movement is to keep the bow straight. There is a possibility of overdoing the movement. So it is possible to go out too far, and it is possible to come in too far as well. Really, you want to think of this outward and inward motion happening in the upper third or lower third of the bow, depending on which bow direction you're going. So when you're going down bow, when you get to about here, that's when you want to start thinking about going outward. And similar, when you're going up bow, when you get to about here, that's when you want to think about going inward. Practicing in front of the mirror is a great way to practice straight bowing. And also looking at your bow is important when you play. When you're watching your bow, you want to look or watch the space between your bow and the bridge. So right here, because that's pretty easy to tell if you're parallel or not. In addition to just keeping the bow straight, you also want to make sure that you are staying in sounding point 3, that you are staying directly halfway between the bridge and the fingerboard. Look at your bow, practice in front of the mirror, because it's super common for the bow to slide around for beginners. So if it's happening to you, don't worry, it'll get better with time and practice. Now we're going to talk about the balance of the bow fingers. So in the lower part of the bow, our pinky is the most active finger. When you're in the lower part of the bow, you should be feeling your pinky engaged right along here. Your pinky should be feeling heavy. However, when you are in the upper half, it is the index finger that has the most weight onto it. The index finger should be heavy in the upper half. One of my favorite exercises for feeling this balance change or this shift in weight or transfer of weight, whatever you want to call it, is this. You're going to start at the frog, but lift your index finger off of the bow. Then you're going to draw your bow to the middle and stop. Now, at the middle, you're going to put your index finger back on the bow and take your pinky off the bow and draw your bow to the tip. You're going to keep your bow hand the exact same way, index finger on, pinky off, go back to the middle. Then, pinky on, index finger off, back to the frog. That exercise should help you feel that transfer of weight, and that's what you should be feeling in your hand each time you do a long bow. Now, it's super common for the pinky to be really weak at first. I mean, come on, when do we ever use our pinkies like in day-to-day life? So if you're finding that your pinky is just really, really weak and you want to take it to the gym, so to speak, this is one of my favorite pinky exercises for beginners. You're going to put your bow on your left shoulder, and then you're going to press down with your pinky and allow your bow to come off of your shoulder. Then you're going to gently set the bow back down on your shoulder, feeling the weight and resistance in your pinky the entire time. I call these pinky push-ups. In order to produce a full pleasing sound, you need to utilize your arm weight rather than pressure. When you press down on the bow, a lot of times the sound is harsh and you are actually squashing the beautiful resonance of the instrument. Now, I'm not going to lie, feeling the arm weight is something that took me a really long time to get, but here's an exercise to help you begin to understand the difference. You're going to take your right arm, and then you're going to point at me with your left hand. You're going to put your left finger, right underneath your right elbow, and then really try to feel the weight of your arm. Make your arm like dead weight, like it's been chopped off from your body and it's just gonna fall down, okay? Your finger should have a hard time holding your arm up. Then you're just gonna gradually move your finger up your arm, really feeling that weight at every point. Be really mindful of your shoulder too. Make sure that your shoulder is relaxed until you get to your fingers. And again, you should be feeling a lot of weight on this left finger. That is utilizing your natural arm weight. That's gonna give you the best, most resonant, most full sound. In terms of how to change your sound or how to produce dynamics, we have 4 basic ways. Way 1, which is going to be the easiest way, is to simply change the amount of bow you're using. If you go from using full bows to half bows, it's going to naturally sound softer without you having to do anything extra. So that is the way that I always suggest doing dynamics for beginners. Second, which is probably the one that is maybe the most obvious, is changing the amount of weight you have into the bow. This one is actually a little bit trickier than it seems, because if you take too much weight out, then the sound is no longer solid. It doesn't have a core. And similarly, if you put too much weight in, it's going to sound harsh. And a lot of times beginners, they don't really know the difference between pressure versus weight yet. So they just end up pressing really, really hard on the bow and the sound isn't great. The third way is with bow speed. So when you want to create a crescendo, when you want to get louder, you can speed your bow up. And when you want to get softer, you can slow your bow down. And the final way is by changing your contact point, something we talked about a little bit at the beginning of the video, but it's going to sound very different if you're playing over the fingerboard versus over the bridge. So that's another way to change your sound. The final topic of this video is how to develop fluidity in your bow hand. I'm sure when you watch professionals play, you can't help but notice how fluid their fingers look. They have this beautiful movement at the frog. And I'm not going to lie to you, this is something that takes a while to develop, especially for adult beginners. We just have so much excess tension. We want to make sure that we're holding our bow in the right way. There's a billion things going on in our minds when we play, right? So this is not going to be an easy overnight quick fix, but it is something that you should be working towards in the long term. So I like to explain bow hand fluidity in this way. We have 2 goalposts that we're going for when we bow. We have how we want our hand to look at the frog, or a frog hand. And at the frog, all of our fingers are very curved and the whole hand is balanced, i.e. I'm not going that way, I'm not going that way. The entire hand is balanced. Goalpost 2 is at the tip, where the fingers are straighter and the entire hand is balanced towards the index finger, okay? So typically what happens is we have no problem with the tip hand. That just kind of happens naturally. We start great, we play, and usually beginners have no problem with this. The issue arises when you go back up bow. When you come up bow, you need to rebalance your hand and recurve your fingers. And that is typically the part that students struggle with. So as you're going up bow, as you cross over the middle, think about your pinky becoming heavy and all of your fingers curving or curling inwards towards your palm. Also, don't feel like you have to go all the way to the tip. This kind of depends on like how tall you are and how long your arms are. But me, I'm not that tall, I'm only 5'4", so I can only go to about here on my bow. The key is you want to keep your elbow bent. You never want to have your elbow straightened because then it can very easily lock out. So don't feel like you have to go all the way to the tip. Keep a slight bend in your elbow. I hope this was helpful and informative. And if you enjoyed the video, please make sure you're subscribed to my channel and think about how much more you can learn working with me inside of Learn Violin Online.